is the regular monthly meeting of the Augsburg Vision Port Authority. It is Thursday, August 6, 2020. It is 3:35 p.m. I call this meeting to order. We are fortunate to have two new members who are able to vote today. One of them is here in the room with us, Jen Fickman from Augsburg. If you can see on camera, Jen is over in the corner. And on the internet with us is Nicole Terminelli. Welcome to both of you. We are hoping that the third new member, Tony Kennedy, may be joining us online shortly. Mr. Lawrence, do you have any letters of communications to the board?
Yes, we do. They're in the board read file, and with having new members, some of this I will just try to make it as clear as possible. With letters and communication, there's a board read file every month, and that might be news articles, letters that are written to the OBPA in different forms, either in support or thank yous and things like that. So we try to get them out to the board as soon as, or at the end of the month, and you can review that, but you can see in the board read file, for example, right there, you see there was a thank you from their recent carp tournament, and a number of articles based on some of the things that we've been doing here in the past month, and you see the article on that through new board members. So that generally you'll see that every monthly board meeting.
Any questions, any comments regarding letters of communication? If not, we'll move on to approval of the board meetings. Minutes, I'm sorry, Mr. King, did you have an opportunity to review that?
I did review them, and they are as good as they are, so I would move their acceptance.
Is there a second?
Awesome.
All those in favor of accepting the board minutes of July 16th, 2020, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you, Nicole. They are approved. Move on to reports, presentations and reports. First, we have the Finance Committee report. Mr. Coffin.
Well, we had a meeting of the Finance Committee, which is Sam and Dave and me. And they are open meetings. They take place on the final Monday of each month, with the exception of Memorial Day. And at that point, Steve and Patty tell us what they see as pertinent and important as a part of the financial reports. They do send us the reports before the meeting. And we do our best to make sense out of them and understand them, but in this particular year, given that some expenses have changed and the revenues have changed so drastically, really their interpretation is very important. And for my purposes, I want to mention a couple of details, but for my purposes, I think the most important thing that came out of that meeting was that while we have received some support from the CARES Act and from the PPP program, that if we were to project that the border would stay closed through the end of the year, and predicting that is impossible, but that's a real possibility. That if we were to say that we will have to figure some other plan that affects either revenue or expenses by as soon as September. So by September, we're going to have some news. And for instance, the federal government this week is reviewing the possibility of another program which could supply the same sort of support that's already come to the authority. So watch the news, and then the negotiations start. Also, I understand that the authority is in close contact with the State Office of Budget, the governor's office, and that they know what's going on, and that they will know what's going on. So the specific things on the statement, Jen, that I thought were interesting were that on the statement of financial position, there's a current liability column or entry under accrued expenses for $21 million, which is, you know, there's some definitions of terms in financial statements that aren't just what I would use in everyday common language. So this represents in large part the original bonding cost of building the bridge. The balance on that, which is about $18 million. And I wouldn't have thought of that as a current expense. I think that I would have thought of it as a long-term expense. However, it is defined as a current liability. And the practice for the past several years has been to go to the state and get permission each year to defer the principal payments that the authority would otherwise be scheduled to make on that. And it's on a schedule, it's not the whole amount. We pay the interest and we use the balance of the funds that would be paid for principal for purposes that fit the purpose of the authority, which is to create jobs, to specifically through operating the airport, the port, the industrial park, and the bridge. And then the other entry that I thought was interesting is the part of the general expenses under the Statement of Activities Port Fund. Under expenses, there's a category labeled general expenses, which is shows the airport at $37,000 in general expenses, and that is the airport security cost. Does that represent more than 1 month?
It's not just the airport security, it's also MAPCO, who is our parking lot management company, and they hold a loan for the parking lot system that we
Sure.
purchased. And there's also the petroleum and sales use tax.
Okay.
So that is a combination of three things.
You know what the monthly charge for that loan with NAPCO is?
It's around $3,000,
A little bit more maybe.
a little bit, but not 4,000.
Just for the equipment.
Mhm.
That's my report. Are there any other questions? It's my sense that the guidance from Steve and Patty is we need to understand what they tell us. We need to make that effort to understand it. But we need to put a lot of faith in their interpretation of things. And also, I'm comforted that I think Sam is really deeply involved in this and knows a great deal about sources of income and expenditures. Because I think you're here practically every week, frequently
Definitely
multiple
every week.
days.
Sometimes, multiple, almost every day,
That's right.
yeah. It was necessary at that time.
I wonder if there are any other questions?
Jen?
None at this time.
Nicole?
I just have one question. I can hear myself echo. Interesting. What is our fiscal year? Are we January to December? What is our fiscal year considered? The year-to-date numbers that are on here.
April 1st to March 31st.
We follow the state, Nicole.
Okay. Thank you.
Be because of our relationship with the state, we need to complete our budget every year by the end of December. We need to adopt the budget really in early December, so that it can be submitted to the state and then incorporated into the state budget. So we have 2 years that we need to deal with. One is the fiscal year, and then the other is that our budget planning needs to be done by the end of the calendar year.
Okay, Jen, Nicole? See, Tony's not on yet. Anything else, Nicole?
Nope, I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, for the reports included, the income expense report. Right?
Nothing has changed since the finance committee meeting. I don't know if you would like me to do some sort of finances 101 as we have new board members.
You know, as we go through this, especially the next couple of meetings, let's try to be careful in the acronyms we use, since some of the new members may not realize what they mean since they come from different backgrounds. So let's try to say it outright. Makes it easier, I think, for those to pick up what we're talking about, just so we all remember that.
Yeah.
Right, Jen, that'll
Thank
help,
you.
eh? Right, Nicole?
Yes, that would be very helpful.
Mr. Chairman, you wouldn't mind if Patty did just a kind of a high level of
That's fine.
of the report, just for the new members, and then also, remember Megan wasn't here, so some of that, and Patty and I talked about this and just said, do it at a high level, and should there be any questions, you can stop her or wait till the end and ask about that, so.
All right, feel
we
free.
just, I know you've heard it, but just to be open with everybody else.
Mhm.
We have, for those who are new, we have 2 funds. We have the Bridge Fund and we have the Port Fund. The Bridge Fund includes this building, the toll booths, and the bridge. The Port Fund encompasses the airport, the industrial park, the marine terminal, and the railroad. Because each of the entities in the Port Fund have their own chart of accounts, we do a statement of activity showing each of the 4 entities, then we combine them to do the budget to actual. So the Port Fund has 2 reports where the Bridge Fund only has 1. We also, right now being a very unusual year, as Chris said, every December we submit the budget to the state. We did do that this year, and it was approved by the state. However, that was pre-COVID. Probably the week after I got here, Steve and I sat down and redid the budget, trying to estimate what might be happening, what might not be happening. Most of it, affects the bridge and the airport. We overcompensated for the loss of bridge traffic, but we undercompensated for the airport fuel sales and fare charges. So there are a couple of things that will look a little off on the budget. As a result of COVID, as Chris said, we have received PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, in the amount of about $430,000. And we received that in May and was to be used by the end of June. We have received a $2.4 million CARES Act grant for airport expenses only. The grant is open for 4 years, though the OBPA will likely run through it in 18 to 24 months. We have received deferments on 2 of our debts for the moment. They are up for renewal again in October. We have granted 3 of our tenants in the industrial park deferments. They have begun paying us back already. They had only asked for a short deferment, and they are starting to repay. We've made a few personnel decisions. We didn't fill an opening at the toll booth. We decided not to fill the Director of Operations position at this time. And we have not hired the normal number of summer help that often works on the bridge and around in maintenance. And we have cut back on spending. So we have tried to do all of these things to keep us on somewhat solid footing during the middle of COVID. If you look at the bridge fund actual to budget, that sheet, you will notice under rental income that the bridge receives $95,000 a month in income. The majority of that comes from the border station. And the lease we have with the border station brings us just over $90,000 a month in rent, which has been a huge help right now. General expenses, you will notice, are over budget right now. However, we have a couple of things. Some of our quarterly payments are actually budgeted monthly, and we have the fiscal year-end audit, which always tends to front-load the expenses under general expenses. So right now, we are still in a profitable position. Much of that has to do in the bridge with the PPP program that we received. If you go to the port fund with the 4 categories across, you'll notice that there is an airport grant for the environmental assessment phase 1 terminal improvement, and that unfortunately overinflates our income on the airport side, but it is income that we receive, so we do mention it. We also have, in the month of June, we received $139,000 in CARES Act money. The rest of the expenses are, we have rental income in the industrial park. We have port operating fees, which can be storage income, weighing, and port receiving fees. Plus, we have the big wind turbine project that's happening this summer. Our expenses are general expenses. They're relatively normal. We can go to the actual versus budget on the port, and you can see how we're doing overall for the year. The wind turbine project is under budget, but that is simply a timing issue. We had a delay in one of our ships coming in. It has since come in. In our other income, we have quite a large profit right now, and that has to do with some insurance proceeds that we got as reimbursement for repairs on Building 11. So that will carry through for the entire year. Our salaries and expenses, we're keeping everything down as best we can. Our maintenance expenses are down. So we're really trying to look at what we spend. Are there any questions?
I just had one quick question, just
Sure.
the point to clarify. When you talked about the CARES Act
Mm-hmm.
for the airport, I just want to understand. It's for the airport, but it's being used throughout the airport?
It's
No.
used only for the airport.
Specific to airport.
We have to submit, every time we want to be reimbursed for something, we have to submit the backup to it. It gets approved, or questions are asked, and it gets adjusted. So far, we have not had any adjustments made to any of our submissions. They've accepted all of our airport expenses to be covered.
Okay. Thank you.
Just an update for everyone, our accounts payable just inched over $1 million, but it's 1.1. Most of that has to do with the Siemens Gamesa project. So as soon as we start getting the revenue in for that, we will be back down to under $1 million. We're a bit over 900,000 right now, if you don't consider those, so we're keeping it under the $1 million. Our AR has come down almost 100,000, except for the Siemens Gamesa and the Koi Lenny, which is all the wind turbine monies, and we have approximately $500,000 out, and
Haven't received anything yet?
It's been built.
it's been
It's all
billed, we've
been billed
received
at one
102.
60-day payment. Thing with Siemens Gamesa, and so we are using our, what cash flow and funds that we do have, we're paying the people we need to pay, the crane operators,
Okay.
the crane company, rental people, and then that, so, you know, when everything settles out, there should be, besides profit, there'll also be revenue there that we'd already paid, it's really reimbursement.
Do we anticipate payment within 60 days of billing, is that?
Yes. We did get payment for May. Our first one was a little over 100,000,
Good.
which helped significantly, but then there was a lag of no ships until the last 10 days. So that starts it all over, so we start the costing and the billing. That gets submitted, it got submitted last week, so the clock ticks. So you won't see that roughly until the end of September, which, the money's there, it's just the cash flow part of it.
If you remember, Chris, we had a discussion months ago regarding income from the port and possibility of some of it staying at the port for whatever reason. Maintenance upgrades, a reserve for anything that may happen. In light of this year, though, I don't even know if that's possible. But,
That's our goal,
yes,
and we'll see when it changes. It might not be everything we want, but it might be something.
okay, good.
Still feels like the payables are keep continuing to make headway.
Little bit.
Slowly but surely, which is a
Right, we're-
good thing.
And the
So,
AP part, that's kind of
that's a good
our
thing.
goal, just to keep inching it down, and then maybe when things catch up, it'll come down greater monthly, and that's kind of where we're at.
But really, in order to drive the AP down, you've got to have more revenue
Gotta have
than
revenue.
Yeah,
expense.
Mhm.
And this closing of the bridge is a problem in terms of revenue.
Just so the new members understand, our accounts payable at one time was much higher than it is now. And I think Steve has worked at it, and Patty, since she's been here, to get that down. We want to pay as many vendors off as we possibly can within a reasonable time frame. And I think that's our goal, is to do that. As Chris just mentioned, if we don't have revenue coming in, then we can't reduce our accounts payable. And under the circumstances with COVID and everything, if the bridge is open, I think we'd be in a lot better shape. But, we have to proceed realizing that we have to be very careful about
Yes.
expenses.
That's right.
and Jen and Nicole, I think, I might have mentioned it Friday, but July and August account for more than a quarter of our income on the bridge for the whole year. So summertime and traffic and all of that. So, the timing, if this was all January and February, overall budget wouldn't be as great a hit as we were gonna lose these months, and I know just this month alone, it's over 200,000 in revenue for July. And I'll talk about that in the bridge report.
Anything else, Patty?
No.
Anyone have any questions of Patty? Ken, you're
Thank you,
good?
Patty.
Thank you.
Nicole, you're good?
I'm good, thank you.
Anyone else? Megan? Dave? Chris?
All good?
Okay, let's move on. First traffic report?
Yeah, and I'll just, I think we did talk about with some of the new members on last Friday, but what you're seeing there for the auto crossings and for July is basically the same that we've been seeing for the last 4 months. Auto crossings haven't much moved. They've gone maybe 91, 92, down to 90. That's pretty much what we expect. Truck traffic has increased, so that drives down that percentage change. At one point, we were up to 32%, and then now that's driven down to 17. You see that 17. I think we have had it 1 month as low as 15. And just in case I haven't mentioned it to the new members, a truck basically counts as 3 cars for revenue. So it has a little greater effect on the overall revenue, even though it counts as 1 crossing. So instead of seeing total crossings at 91% or 89, you see it at 83, and that's the effect that trucks have on driving that down. But you can see the difference between 1920 and 2021 is $200,000 basic there. And you know, if you had that revenue right now along with the other support that we had, we'd be in much better financial shape. But you can see how great a hit that is on that budget. And just looking forward, this is opinion. I don't anticipate any change in the status of the border closure. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't see that changing just from people I've talked to and other bridges and everything like that. So I'm kind of the least, I think the earliest I'm thinking is November, December. But you know, that something could change there, but we've been each month, we really thought it would kind of end, and as you guys, everybody knows, it's just kind of carried on. And so you've got to deal with not just us, but with another country and how they perceive us. Any questions on that? Jen?
No.
Okay. Nicole, anything here on bridge crossings?
Nope, thank you, straightforward.
Move on to the airport activity, the occupancy report. Stephanie?
Okay, the numbers for Allegiant Airlines just came in right before I left. We only had 72 in plane for Allegiant and 109 deplaned for the entire month. I do have SkyWest's numbers in there, in the blue. So you can see that the SkyWest numbers are slowly inching up from the worst in April. But if you had looked at March's numbers day by day, after the 15th, they dropped off almost to nothing. So I would say that if March had continued the way it should have prior to, March would have been our biggest month ever. Allegiant has now canceled the remainder of their flights for the summer. They're still anticipated to start back October 3rd. A lot of it has to do with the quarantine, the states that are required to quarantine when they come in and out. And that's an effect too with all airports in the state of New York right now. Traffic has gone way down again. As far as the occupancy report, it is, she has it on there. It remains pretty stable. We lost one long-term tenant, he sold his plane and got out of flying. However, we picked up another one. So we are still at 8 out of 10 hangars, T hangars are occupied. We have 3 tenants whose leases are up the end of this month. And just due to the difficulty of getting things done anymore, they have not submitted their leases yet, but they all have assured me that they will be getting the leases in, and they intend to stay. One of those folks is a Canadian resident, and he, of course, intends to stay since his airplane is in the hangar here, and he can't get over here, so it might take a while, but he will continue on. Any questions?
Yes, just on what we're gonna try to do about numbers, if there's anything SkyWest or what's going on from a marketing standpoint. I realize a lot of that depends on the border, but still, I think one of the things that was in the, maybe the read file or something that came, talked about 75% planes occupied, or 70, I forget, down 75%, we're down 91% or something. Is there anything we can do to turn that around any quicker? When you visit with people on plane, so I guess, and where I go with that is I still wonder, where are we at with the interest of Allegiant, SkyWest, whoever, in regards to making sure they're still flying out of here?
From what I've talked to Allegiant, they are still intent, they understand the reasoning. As we've talked in the past, one of our big draws was the Canadian traffic. We don't have that now, and they understand there's nothing that the airport itself can do about it. With SkyWest, last week we had both flights, both Illinois and Washington DC were under the quarantine. So anyone coming in from those areas were required to quarantine. DC was lifted on Tuesday. But those are 2 transfer airports, and with the majority of the states being required to quarantine, people just don't want to fly here, and flying out of here, even though you're a resident of New York State, if you're out of the state for more than 24 hours in any of those quarantine states, you're required to quarantine when you come back. And it's not just air travel, not just with the aviation, but personally speaking, people don't want to leave town for a few days knowing that they're going to have to quarantine when they come back. And something like that, if it's a voluntary thing, to go out of town, if they choose to go out of town and come back, their employers are not paying them to quarantine for the 14 days. So your 1 week vacation, you're using 3 weeks of your time to take care of that. So that's what we're seeing statewide now, with so many.
That's what I'm getting at, yeah.
So many areas under quarantine. We still get a lot of questions about wanting to fly. People who have to fly are flying. But there's very little business travel. Vacation travel, people are staying at home, and a lot of nervousness about what if I go out of town and before I come back, the state becomes a quarantine state, and we really have no answer for that. It just depends upon the numbers and how it's calculated on Tuesday mornings.
How many employees are we at right now,
In Plymouth,
total? Get that.
about 400 a month.
Are you talking for the whole year?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, where are we?
On the 10,000.
We're at, I think 770? Do you have? Oh.
Did you maybe talk about, Stephanie, the fact that maybe was that gonna be waived, that requirement?
Yeah, we've been
Potentially?
grandfathered in, or?
Yes.
Yes, that 10,000 employment has been waived for this year, or for 2021, so we're good. Can you go to the
That's a really,
other page
That's good.
on that? There should be, on that, that's a spreadsheet, this first page of the spreadsheet has the actual numbers.
if we can turn.
I don't have that.
Oh, you don't?
So we're gonna use 2019 employments.
Yes, we're allowed to use 2019 employments
That's really,
for,
I just had to do
yes,
that.
2021. So we should be okay with that.
And then the only other question I would have is, do we have a plan ready and in place to advertise slash promote whatever, whenever some sort of restriction is limited, or lifted? Which could be, who knows when, I guess.
Yeah, who knows when, I think a lot's gonna depend on how things are lifted. We don't have much of an advertising budget this year. We're reworking the website right now, and I'm hoping that when the website is completely reworked, we can advertise through there, since it's it's an avenue that we already have readily available to do that.
I have reached out to the chamber, and we haven't set anything in stone yet, but I want to ask for some of their help and some ideas.
I guess that's what I'm wondering, are we doing what we
They're
can do?
aware of it, but we've all been.
You got other
busy
stuff
with
to
other
do too, I
things.
just wondered if we were planning
Yeah,
for that.
but to your point, we focus in on that as we see it, coming or whatever, but ask for their help in some way to promote the.
I just wanna be ready when the governor says September 1st, it's okay to fly again. We're ready to roll, so we can fill the planes and keep people working.
We had good success with that state grant that the senator got us, and there's no reason why we can't